Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So we continue to read in the Srimad Bhagavatam 4th Canto, chapter 24, entitled Chanting the Song sung by Lord Shiva, text 44. Darshanam no titrikshunam dehi bhagavadharchitam rupam priyatamam svanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam no titrikshunam Darshanam no titrikshunam Dehi Bhagavatharchitam Dehi Bhagavatharchitam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam no titrikshunam Dehi Bhagavatharchitam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Savendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam no didrikshunam Dehi Bhagavatarchitam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam no didrikshunam Dehi Bhagavatarchitam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam no didrikshunam Dehi Bhagavatarchitam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam no didrikshunam Dehi Bhagavatarchitam Rupam Priyatamam Svanam Sarvendriya Gunanjanam Darshanam vision Naha our Didrikshunam desirous to see Dehi kindly exhibit Bhagavata of the devotees Architam as worshipped by them Rupam form Priyatamam dearmost Svanam of your devotees Sarva Indriya all the senses Guna qualities Ajnanam very much pleasing. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Lord, I wish to see you exactly in the form that your very dear devotees worship. You have many other forms, but I wish to see your form that is especially liked by the devotees. Please be merciful upon me and show me that form, for only that form worshipped by the devotees can perfectly satisfy all the demands of the senses. Purport. In the Shruti or Veda mantra, it is said that the supreme absolute truth is Sarva Karma, Sarva Gandha, Sarva Rasaha. Or, in other words, he is known as Rasuvai Saha, the source of all relishable relationships. We have various senses, the powers of seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, etc. And all the propensities of our senses can be satisfied when the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Bhakti means engaging all the senses in the service of the master of the senses, Rishikesha. These material senses, however, cannot be engaged in the service of the Lord. Therefore, one has to become free from all designations. Sarvobhadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam. One has to become free from all designation or false egotism and thus become purified. When we engage our senses in the service of the Lord, the desires or the inclinations of the senses can be perfectly fulfilled. Lord Shiva therefore wants to see the Lord in a form which is inconceivable to the Bauddha philosophers or the Buddhists. The impersonalists and the voidists also have to see the form of the Absolute. In Buddhist temples there are forms of Lord Buddha in meditation, but these are not worshipped like the forms of the Lord in Vaishnava temples. Forms like Radha Krishna, Sitaram or Lakshmi Narayan. Amongst the different sampradayas, Vaishnava sects, either Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan is worshipped. Lord Shiva wants to see that form perfectly, just as the devotees want to see it. The words Rupam Priyatamam Svanam are specifically mentioned here, indicating that Lord Shiva wants to see that form which is very dear to the devotees. The word Svanam is especially significant because only the devotees are very, very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Jnanis, Yogis and Karmis are not particularly dear, for the Karmis simply want to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their order supplier. The Jnanis want to see him to become one with him, and the Yogis want to see him partially represented within their hearts as Paramatma. But the Bhaktas or the devotees want to see him as in his complete perfection. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Venum kvanantam aravinda dalayataksham Barhavatam samastidham buddha sundarangam Kandarpakoti kamaniya vishesha shobham Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept at playing on his flute, whose eyes are blooming like lotus petals, whose head is bedecked with peacock feathers, whose beauty is tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and whose unique loveliness charms millions of cupids. Thus Lord Shiva's desire is to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is described in this way. That is, he wants to see him as he appears to the Bhagavatas, the devotees. The conclusion is that Lord Shiva wants to see him in complete perfection and not in the impersonalist or voidist way. Although the Lord is one in his various forms, Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, still his form is the young enjoyer of the gopis and companion of the cowherd boys, Kishora Murti. This is the most perfect form. Thus Vaishnavas accept the form of the Lord and his Vrindavan pastimes as the chief form. Om Ajnati Mirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Miritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Svabarantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vagishayasya vadane lakshmiryasya chavakshasi Yasyaste hridaye samvit tam narasimham aham bhaje Pralada hridayaladam bhaktavitya vidaram Sharatinduruchim vande pavindra vandanam harim. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi ki jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai ki jai. So the verse once more, my dear Lord, I wish to see you exactly in the form that your very dear devotees worship. You have many other forms, but I wish to see your form that is especially liked by the devotees. Please be merciful upon me and show me that form, for only that form worshipped by the devotees can perfectly satisfy all the demands of the senses. So I found this a very beautiful verse in regards to a devotee expressing his innermost desire. And I think this is a desire that is something that everyone can aspire for in his devotional life, in his Krishna consciousness. Indeed, we will hear from other sources that actually this is the perfection of life, stated by Krishna himself, that seeing him as an original form, that is the ultimate benediction, the ultimate perfection, and the aspiration of every sincere Vaishnava. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes, for example, the Brahma Samhita, a verse that we sing every morning or like you particularly sing every morning when the deities are being greeted, which describes the Krishna form, the two-handed form playing flute, which is most charming. And there's also the nectar of devotion gives us the understanding why is Krishna the supreme form. Because of all the qualities, the 64 qualities that are available in Godhead or like in the supreme form, Krishna has them all to the full extent. All the 64 qualities, and there are 4 particular features only he has. 4 qualities like his extraordinary, most enchanting flute play, but also the most exquisite beauty is found in his form, in no other form. No other form is as beautiful and attractive as the Krishna form. Also his devotees are being equipped with the most intense and the most sweet prema. Other devotees of the Lord in different forms also experience intense devotional ecstasies, but the devotees of Krishna are said to experience all the rasas. He also, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, he's known as Raso Vaisaha, the source of all relishable relationships or rasas. So these are some features that are unique to the Krishna form, that therefore is worshipped as a supreme form. And also in the name Krishna, therefore, all the most potency is there compared to other forms. And the other form mentioned here in the purport is the impersonal form, his effulgence, which is a very abstract form. It is, strictly speaking, we cannot speak of form. We can speak of substance, because the Brahman effulgence comes from Bri. The syllable means that which expands unlimitedly. So it's an all-pervading energy, in that sense, a form, which consists of the supreme spiritual light, but which is attractive, which is also a form of his. And the Buddhists particularly are attracted to that. And in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we can see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used that very effulgence to attract the Buddhists, because they felt, wow, he's so radiant. Is he the sun god himself? Is he really the Supreme Lord Narayan, who is like, with his effulgence, so attractive? Because it's pure. It's purity. Purity is attractive. If something is very pure and shiny, and then naturally our mind feels like attracted to it, compared to let's say some dim light that's flickering from an electric bulb. That's not necessarily attractive to the eye. Also, Vamanadev is using the effulgence to attract King Bali and all the Brahmins and the demons assembled. It's described like that. This is a very attractive feature of the Lord as well, but compared to what the Krishna form has to offer to the senses, because this is what Lord Shiva also says, only this form can perfectly satisfy all the demands of the senses. It is said, when the devotees with their spiritual senses in the spiritual world see Krishna, each sense is fully absorbed in ecstatic emotion. It said his very appearance, the vision, is like an intoxicating beverage for the eyes. They drink Krishna with their eyes and experience ecstasy. The sound of his voice is thrilling them. They kind of probably faint sometimes. It said also the smell or the fragrance of Krishna's skin is like most exquisite flowers, and so on. So each feature of Krishna, like what can be perceived by the senses, is most exquisite, and therefore Krishna is celebrated as a supreme form, which the devotees are most attracted to. So I would like to focus a bit more on what Shiva expresses here as his desire, because desires are a very important thing in our spiritual life, and we are wanted to give up so-called material desires and develop spiritual desires. And the ultimate spiritual desire is, okay, Krishna, please, I want to see you, I want to be reunited, I want to be back in the spiritual world. So, and actually this is something not just worthwhile, perhaps one must say that's actually the thing to invest one's energy in. Also in material life, we see that a lot of emphasis is given to what's your vision, what's your goal, what's your life vision, Where do you see yourself in so many years? So that's a kind of standard practice in professional world or generally, because people are required to have an aim in life, right? If we don't have an aim, we don't go anywhere. If you just like float around in life, so then we might also arrive somewhere. Maybe we will be pleasantly surprised where we arrive when we float. Maybe we will be unpleasantly surprised when we just float. So but the conscious decision, the conscious intention to aim somewhere, it's different. That's called also co-creating our lives. Krishna is the supreme creator, and we have the ability to co-create by using our ability to manifest things, to make decisions, to perform actions, right? So, and spiritual desires are that are most crucial for the devotees. Also, of course, in your material life, you must have an idea. Okay, how shall I situate myself? Where do I aim at? What is, how to say? Bless you. What is was ist nochmal nachhaltig auf Englisch? Sustainable. It was sustainable in the long run in terms of work that I can do, lifestyle, and so on. So these are questions that come to us, and we got to answer them, combined material life and spiritual life. But as the nectar of devotion also highlights in regards to rules and regulations in spiritual life, the supreme, or like the highest purpose, is that you always remember Krishna. And so at the end, the result of all spiritual activities culminates in the strong, undivided, pure desire to simply be united with Krishna in loving service. That's our philosophy, our faith, our mission, actually. And whatever we do to achieve that depends on our nature, depends on the way we pick up certain services. But this stands at the end as the supreme result. And it is befitting to a devotee to really desire to see the Lord. And I will want to quote a few places that confirm that, because sometimes, or like often, it is found we should not want anything from Krishna, and or like for ourselves, like also even if it's spiritual, the only thing we should desire is like to be in the service of the Lord. And that's, of course, this stands for itself as a pure motivation. But I think we can look at scripture and see that there are also other desires, like in the nectar of devotion, like the desire for example, being liberated, to enter the spiritual world in a personal form, serve the Lord, is a very adequate and bona fide desire, for example, because it bases on the understanding who I truly am. If I truly believe that I'm a spirit soul, that have nothing to do with this material identity and have a spiritual identity in the spiritual world, the most logical conclusion is that I aim for that original identity. Right? That's also what the nectar of devotion highlights, what Srila Prabhupada comments, is that this has nothing to do with material sense gratification. This is a natural conclusion of internalized spiritual knowledge, Atma Tattva. Right. And also in the Ishopanishad, for example, Sri Ishopanishad, the mantras 15 and 16 differ very much from the mantras before that, because Ishopanishad is a very philosophical discourse from the beginning. It builds up, the aim is cultivate knowledge. The Upanishad, the word means also that what brings you closer to the Lord, but also said sitting close to the Guru, receiving instruction. But also it means upa and nishidat, close, that what loosens bondage which comes through ignorance. And how is this bondage loosened? By knowledge. Freedom through knowledge and understanding. So the Ishopanishad, for example, instructs us about the Ishavasya principle, the situation, who is the true Lord, who is the true owner and creator, and builds up on that. And at the end, the devotee suddenly speaks. He offers prayers. The Holy Upanishad is more like instructive, distinguishing between vidya and avidya, and knowledge and ignorance, and demigod worship, the Supreme Lord, impersonalism. And then the devotee suddenly asks, may I please see you? Now, after I have received all the instructions, because knowledge is meant to increase our faith and our inclination to see Krishna. That's the aim of transcendental knowledge. And this is also confirmed by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his comment to the 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, because this chapter is called Vibhuti Yoga. We translate it as the opulences of the Supreme. Vibhuti means opulence. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is arguing, so why does the Lord have a need to, now that place, speak about his vibhutis? And he explains, it is to, in order to further convince the student of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is the supreme worshipable object. And we find in this 10th chapter the 4 key verses as well of the Bhagavad Gita, starting with Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo Matar Sarvam Parvartate. I am the source of everything, I maintain everything, everything emanates from me. Those who have truly understood that, they engage in my loving service with all their hearts. Buddha Bhava Samanvita. From knowledge, devotion can arise. It's devotion we know from Nectar of Devotion. Bhakti is completely independent and is not dependent on knowledge, but knowledge can be somewhat of a fertilizer or like an item that stimulates your devotion. Because from understanding Krishna in his nature, naturally the mind can also create faith. That's the idea. Knowledge shall lead to faith. You know, our philosophy, this is why we are so much instructed by arguments, by descriptive philosophical arguments distinguishing one thing from another. It's always about convincing the mind, clearing doubts, training our intelligence to see things in proper perspective, so that we come to the determination, yes, Krishna will be my aim of life. This is the purpose of our transcendental knowledge that we have, so that we have faith in the chanting of the holy name, in the service of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada explicitly says that in some points. You know, if you research that a bit, type in, for example, in Vani quotes, you will see Srila Prabhupada points that out. So, and in the result, we can also see if our studies, for example, are successful, if we first of all see, yes, our understanding of Krishna broadens, but also our determination, our faith in spiritual life increases. Right? Because sometimes we might have some, okay, we know this and know that, and now I can quote this shloka and speak this argument. And it also has its place that we just have sometimes it's just also satisfying the intelligence, their needs of the intelligence, depending what type of person you are. So, but ultimately it is about that this knowledge supports the faith. And here in the Upanishad, in mantra 15, the student starts to speak and says, Hiranmayena patrena satyasya hitam mukham tattvam pushan apavrenu satya dharmaya trishtaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. So he particularly asks for the removal of the Brahman effulgence, something also that is mentioned in this purport. It's also one form of the Lord, but it's more of a transcendental, how do you say, Vorhang? What is that in English? Curtain, transcendental curtain that covers the Lord spiritually. So, and he says, no, I don't want to see that form, I want to see your original form. So there's another place where a devotee expresses the desire, I want to see you. Maybe you remember also now, back then, the song of George Harrison, where he also particularly uses that phrase, I really want to see you, Lord. So this desire is a very prominent thing in spiritual life. And in the purport, here Srila Prabhupada quotes, I don't know if I have the time, I guess not, but those who want to read this a bit of the purport of mantra 15, he gives some nice quotations also, how the Brahma Jyoti is more described in detail, a bit metaphoric, and it becomes also clear why this is so attractive to spiritualists. So I myself could not pray for, please remove this effulgence, I'm not even there. I would need to pray, please remove some material coverings that I come even close to grasping some spiritual light or form. But still, the essential thing is the same. I'm covered, I can see you, I want to see you, and I depend on your mercy that you reveal yourself. That's also very important, that Krishna is not, we cannot discover him like this, like you discover, oh, I opened this up and now I see it. Krishna has to choose to show himself. And that's a very important devotional item, the humility to bow down to the Lord and make Him wanting to show Himself to you. And that's the idea. We will not be able to just detect Him somewhere. Oh, there He is. It's more like, please show yourself to me. And we see the archa vigraha with our covered senses. Also the Upanishad speaks a lot about that. Srila Prabhupada points out, like, since we are covered, this is the form of the Lord He makes available to us, and through which we can also, by dedicated heartfelt service, perceive the Lord to some degree. And each one has, like everyone has his particular inclination, what form of the Lord attracts you. So all of you are engaged in some form of deity worship, I assume. And even if you're not especially engaged in deity worship, you know the deities. And you know that particular deities attract you in a particular way. And you like to connect to them through either prayer or worship or like supporting them. Because there's some connection. So the more one purifies one's existence, the more the spiritual perceptions become stronger. And also the desire, the eagerness to see the Lord. And then the devotee here in the Upanishad, he continues to say, O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, or regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays, so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal supreme personality of Godhead, like unto the sun, as am I. And I find these two verses, I find them very important, the statements that are made here. Here also the Lord, the devotee identifies himself as, I'm of the same nature with you, we belong together, so to speak. And he has a sense of, now is the time, I feel it would be appropriate at the moment that I can see you. Please show yourself. Right. And he identifies himself in the previous verse, show yourself to your pure devotee. We would say, what pure devotee considers himself a pure devotee? I would suggest the perspective of, if genuine spiritual desire is there, and if genuine detachment is there, if you have lost identification with your body, if you can sincerely detect no other desire in yourself than wanting to be with the Lord, if this is prominent, if the only thing that moves you, every fiber of your body is just wanting to be with Krishna, then you can understand, okay, I'm there where I'm supposed to be, and now the natural next step is I want to see the Lord, otherwise I can't exist. If knowledge truly, matures, and if it becomes consciousness, and if then one sees oneself as being completely identified in a positive sense with the Lord. This is something also we can desire, or should desire, that we regain our understanding of I'm one with the Lord, in the sense as the sun rays have particles. I'm a particle of the Lord, I'm His emanation of very same or almost same quality, different quantity, and therefore I belong. Therefore I belong. That's very important, that we really have this consciousness, I belong to Krishna. Now we have this maybe, I belong here, belong there, or I don't belong anywhere, perhaps deep down in our minds, whatever is going on. But we can check ourselves also, how much sense of belonging do I have toward Krishna? And this is an important desire to develop. Please, Lord, I want to reconnect, I want to re-belong again. Not that I do not belong at any moment, but that I remember that I belong. As the sun particle belongs to the sun rays, belongs to the sun globe. And the Brahma Jyoti is also an interesting energy. It said this is our origin as well. There in the Krishna book, for example, when Krishna and Arjuna meet Mahavishnu, they travel to the universe. And Srila Prabhupada, this is the 80th chapter, 82, 4 or 6, I'm not sure now. But there Srila Prabhupada quotes also a scripture where where the famous phrase Saham, like where it's about like I'm one with the Lord, I'm Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, and it's this, and he says that actually the Brahmajyoti consists of unlimited little spirit souls that shine, sparks. So that this is our nature, Brahman, that we also originate from Krishna's effulgence, as also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and two purports of the Sri Brahma Samhita phrases is like that actually the individual souls emanate from the super soul as sun rays emanate from the sun. Right? We manifest from the Lord. We are His parts, like, no matter where exactly from. The essential point is we emanate from Him and we belong. That's the essential message. And this understanding must be revived, because if we truly have that faith understanding, then naturally we'll aim for that. Like also on a material platform, if you have a sense of belonging, if you can identify with where you are at and what you do, it empowers you. Because you have a sense of identity, that's me, that's what I'm supposed to do. Here I go. So in a similar sense, this is what we want to have. Positive identification with the Lord in a spiritual personal sense. And therefore, and in this way, losing the false identification with the body. And another personality that has attained that supreme benediction is the beginning of our parampara, Lord Brahma. It is described in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 9th chapter, we find this one report where also Brahma starts his existence. He doesn't know what's happening. It's dark around him. He sits on the lotus flower, don't know what to do. Then he performs his tapasya. And in due course, through that tapasya, Lord Vishnu becomes pleased with him. And he chooses to reveal Vaikuntha to him. That's described in the 9th chapter of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. As said here, Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibrations from the sky, like tapa, and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. So penances or renunciation can attract the mercy of the Lord. And then he said the personality of Godhead, being thus very much satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma, was pleased to manifest his personal abode Vaikuntha, the supreme planet above all others. This transcendental abode of the Lord is adored by all self-realized persons, freed from all kinds of miseries and fear of illusory existence. So there are beautiful descriptions of the Vaikuntha realm and the Lord itself. I won't be able to go through that. Try to give me a second to find the words. Maybe one description. The personality of Godhead seen leaning favorably toward his loving servitors. His very sight, intoxicating and attractive, appeared to be very much satisfied. He had a smiling face, decorated with an enchanting reddish hue. He was dressed in yellow robes and wore earrings and a helmet on his head. He had 4 hands, and his chest was marked with the lines of the goddess of fortune. Lord Brahma, thus seeing the personality of Godhead in his fullness, was overwhelmed with joy within his heart, and thus in full transcendental love and ecstasy, his eyes filled with tears of love. He thus bowed down before the Lord. That is the way of the highest perfection for the living being. And as seeing Brahma present before him, the Lord accepted him as worthy to create living beings, to be controlled as he desired, and thus being much satisfied with him, the Lord shook hands with Brahma and slightly smiling addressed him thus. So I always like to point on this gesture. So that's also an originates from the spiritual world? The handshake. That's a good question. Oh, exactly, like we did, they shook hands. In fact, they did, and maybe there were several hands shaking because Vishnu is 4. So, a very personal gesture, and like let's hear a short bit from the purport on that, because your purport writes in the I know it's another verse, wait, because it is mentioned again later with the handshake. Yeah, Narayan speaks very pleasantly with Brahma and blesses him to do the service of creation. There's another verse where Brahma then speaks to him and says, well, yeah, you shook hands with me like a good friend, and I'm so touched by that. Yeah, and in this chapter you find that, and Srila Prabhupada comments in the purport, he speaks also of the preacher of Krishna consciousness in this time and age. He says, Krishna will be very much satisfied with those who preach and bring back other souls to Krishna consciousness, and Krishna will shake hands with the person he is very pleased with. So, just imagine that. Just imagine Krishna or Narayan, whoever it is, shaking hands with you, being pleased with your service. That's what is very possible to happen. Brahma received this privilege. It's not easy to attain, but it is something that shows Krishna as a person is involved and is aware of what we are doing. And I think the Ishopanishad, also the mantras, this devotee stating, okay, here I am your pure devotee, here I am of the same nature as you, and please show yourself to me. I think it's also about that we at no point underestimate the power of transcendental knowledge and the power of devotional service. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Jai, Shishi Gonitai Ki Jai. Because on one side, it is about being humble and not thinking oneself to be very advanced. That's one item that we don't think, yeah, I'm spiritually realized and I'm whatever. At the same time, there could be also a trap that we don't develop firm conviction and faith that the process of devotional service will truly lead to this particular, actually, spiritual qualification of seeing the Lord. It could be. We must, I think this everyone must detect in oneself whether one sabotages oneself through some apparent humility, that it actually stops us from fully embracing with faith and conviction the process of devotional service. And that we have faith, the result will also come. Although we shouldn't expect things, at the same time, it's logical, it makes sense if it's highlighted, for example, that the perfection is to see Krishna, that we also understand that's my aspiration, and I have faith that the process will lead me there, and this is a motive that is legit. Being unmotivated devotional service doesn't mean you don't have any motive at all. You must have some motive, otherwise you can't go anywhere. But it shouldn't be a selfish motivation based on false ego. At least this is my experience. I can't imagine to really thrive in maybe my spiritual life or material life if there's not a motivation that makes sense to me where I say, okay, that's why I aim there. That's why I'm convinced that this direction makes sense. Yes, and Lord Shiva in this verse is also not shy to express to the Lord, please, I want to see this particular form. Not just show me, please, any form. This particular form I want to see. It's choosing the supreme form. Hare Krishna. So I would open up for comments, questions, discussions.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Fascinating topic. You mentioned how we should desire to go back to the spiritual world, to be reunited with the Lord in His abode, and same time we come across in Shastra statements like pure devotees never desires to go back. Almost it can be bewildering. You almost feel like shame on you how you desire to go. Is it that for beginners, neophytes, it's recommended to desire, and then when you are on a very high level, you automatically don't desire anymore, or something like that?
I would agree with that. I also spoke once, I think with Bhakti Vikash Maharaj once, about what about in our Sampradaya if someone is more attracted to the Vishnu form instead of Krishna, because as Rupanugas, like the focus is on Krishna and Vrindavan and so on. And he said, well, it's also valid, also all the forms are present within Krishna and also in Vrindavan. Somewhat Narayan has its place. It's not the central place, and in due course of devotional service, also spoke with Kramakanaraj about it, this may change. What I desire now, where I stand now, what motivates me now, might change in due course when I'm in the process of developing. Maybe at some point some desire disappears, and I feel no longer in need, and maybe I'm simply satisfied with being in the service. And yes, Srila Prabhupada also in an act of devotion, of course he clearly points out that the devotee doesn't aspire for so-called liberation or being with Lord in Vaikuntha. And there's even in the ninth canto when Lord Ram sends away his brothers and so on, and Srila Prabhupada comments, yeah, it's not about just being in the association of the Lord, but fulfilling his desires, and that might be being away and doing his bidding, his mission. So yes, as far as I understand it and see it, also the desire for being united not just has its place, but is philosophically very relevant in our spiritual life, and it is something that should not be neglected or dismissed, particularly not if you're not on the level to simply desire that what you're supposed to desire. I can go there and pray, Krishna, the only thing I want is please to engage me in your service. But Krishna knows in my heart, and he knows, yeah, really? So I could pray, yes, okay, probably the argument could be, you could pray, I'm not there yet, I don't desire this, please help me to have only this desire. But also Krishna would see, you really want that? I think it's good to start where we are at, and this will give us drive to serve Krishna, and in due course Krishna might purify us further, or Krishna will reveal to us further what actually is our true spiritual destination and point. So, yeah, the ultimate bhakti, also anyapilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyana etc., is the only thing I want is that Krishna is pleased, and whatever that means for me. So that will be the highest platform, which is emphasis on highest platform.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the topic. I was remembering the book of Bhakti Vikash Maharaj about Bhaktisiddhanta's life, and he's mentioning that the main point of Bhaktisiddhanta was the seer and the seen. How Krishna is the seer and we are to be seen. And yeah, of course it's always this achintya bheda bhed that I'm supposed to, and he mentioned often, don't act in a way that you want to see, but Krishna sees you. And I was just thinking about this, if you really go into this meditation, is Krishna seeing me? Is he seeing me? And you meditate, it's like you feel like you see him through that meditation. And maybe the example of the sun can be given, that may the sun be able to shine on me. And then automatically, if the sun shines on me, I will be able to see. And yeah, I just thought to share that how Bhaktisiddhanta apparently emphasized the point more and more. And I think when we, at least myself, when I do this meditation, is Krishna seeing me? You know, what am I doing? Is he pleased with me? I kind of feel his presence immediately, and I, in a way, see him.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
This verse is about seeing the Lord, and you also explain that we should desire to see Krishna, but it seems to be a goal that is so far distant, and it's not realistic for me, for example, to desire to see Krishna. So instead one should only set goals that are realistic, that one can attain. So if it's so far away to desire to see Krishna, what should one desire?
Well, I would like go back to the perspective that Jagannath Baladev Swachur Ki Jai, Shishigonitai Ki Jai. That one thing is that I have the desire, but it is not that I am the, doer or person who can just at some point detect Krishna, oh, here he is. That it's more like I nourish that desire and hope my desire will be strong enough that Krishna chooses. What is it? Yeah, seeing. Who wants to see whom? Yeah, hoping that Krishna considers my desire strong enough to reveal himself, because that's anyway what we depend on. It's like Krishna needs to choose to show himself to me, so it's about me making myself putting myself in a place that Krishna wants to see me. That's the essential idea. And even if I'm far away from having transcendental vision, I also considered, for me, the prayer, please remove your Brahman effulgence, is completely inappropriate, because I'm not even there. I would need to pray like, please help me to remove all the coverings of senses and mind, that I get more of a glimpse. So in that sense, I see it as a form of surrender, by sincerely praying to Lord, asking Lord that one day, please, may I be able to see you, or if you wish, please show yourself to me. Something like, but that the desire is there simply that it's at some point that it may happen. And the Ishopanishad is what I mentioned, it comes at the end, the 15, 16, the 18 mantras, 15, 16 mantras. And before that, there's a lot of discourse about developing transcendental knowledge. So there's a whole process. And at the end, the student, after having gone through the cultivation of, cultivation of transcendental knowledge, he arrives there. Now I'm kind of enlightened enough, or I truly am, I see things as they are, and from there he comes from a purified platform, or Brahma after his penance. So there's a whole procedure, of course, that by cultivating knowledge and also by engaging in service, which is a form of tapasya, we can attract the mercy of the Lord. But that we do not consider it impossible, I will never see the Lord. I would find that sad, because he wants to see us as well. Is that satisfying your question?
Yes, actually, there's one quote by Dina Bandhu Prabhu. He quotes Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, if you simply follow if your whole life you follow the principles and chant 16 rounds, then in this life you will see Krishna face to face. a famous quote. And Prabhupada looked around and he said, "I guarantee this."
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, these statements of Prabhupada.
So that's.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, last question. Yeah.
It's not a question, maybe.
Or a comment, sure.
Several sentences. I think that desire to see Krishna or God alone is not enough, because we know the example of washer in Mathura. When Krishna went to the Mankura, this washer was in previous life as a yogi whose desire was to see Krishna. But he didn't recognize Krishna, and Krishna killed him. So the most safest desire may be desire to serve Krishna and of course to see him, but not only to see. Excuse me, please.
Thank you. Yes, I think we pointed that out. Like, it's of course a desire cannot be independent of service, because through service we may attract Krishna's mercy, that he may show us himself if he sees we have the proper service attitude. Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Keshava Madhava Prabhu ki jai.
Mas sim, sei lá,